Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on speed reading techniques. My name is Paul Nowak. I'm the founder and CEO here at Iris Reading, and I think you'll find today's session very helpful, especially if you have a lot of reading to get done. So we're going to get right into it. If you're not already familiar with the work that we do here at Iris Reading, we basically teach study skills. That is, teaching students and professionals to read faster, how to memorize information, note-taking, things like that. So today we're going to be focusing on speed reading techniques, although I also want you to be aware that we will be teaching how to comprehend the material too. That's obviously very much involved with reading, right? I mean, your reading speed doesn't really matter unless you're understanding the material. So we'll focus on comprehension as well, in addition to reading faster. And a few housekeeping items to be aware of. First of all, materials for today's session. You can find all the materials at the link you see on your screen here, irisreading.com/YTS. I have that link also in the description of the video, below the video. I'll also include it in the chat for those of you joining us live. So thank you all for coming. There's just a couple of Dropbox PDFs that you'll find there. Don't start reading them yet. You don't have to print them out. You can if you want. But not everyone has easy access to a printer, so just make sure you have them downloaded. And we're going to use those materials to measure our reading speed. Also, we've got the chat open, so feel free to put comments in the chat. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll try to get to them as I see them, or we'll save them for the end of the session. Also, you can let me know where you're broadcasting from. I am broadcasting from the Miami area. Actually, Chicago is my hometown. I moved about 1.5 years ago to the Miami area, but I was born and raised in Chicago. So let me know where you're broadcasting from in the comments, and let's get right to it. So speed reading techniques. Oh, one last thing. If you want content that we'll be updating weekly, subscribe to the channel. So it's just Iris Reading. You're already on the channel, so just hit the subscribe button. The alert button will let you know when we're going live. It'll shoot you an email. And here's what we're going to be covering today. So first off, how fast do you currently read? Some people know their typing speed. Not everyone knows their reading speed. So we'll cover that. We'll also cover how to improve your focus while reading. All of us have this challenge where being able to focus is incredibly important, but it's easier said than done, right? I mean, your phone can go off and you get a text in the middle of reading a chapter. Not to mention, sometimes you're reading, especially when you're reading online, and you've got a notification that pops up or an ad, and there's all these things that could potentially distract us. So we'll talk about improving your focus, because sometimes it's just a distraction that happens randomly. You ever read a whole page of text and you look up like, I have no clue what I just read this entire time. I got to go back and reread now, and this can be very frustrating. So we'll work on improving focus. Also, how to improve your comprehension. There are some strategies for that. We'll talk about how to read faster on the computer screen as well, and how to build up your speed with practice exercises. Actually, we'll do a sampling of exercises in the session today that I think you'll find helpful. And we'll also talk about how to approach more complex information. So it's one thing to read like a blog post or a news article. It's a whole different thing when you're reading some technical textbook material or a journal article. Now, our focus here as readers should be really in 3 areas, and that is speed, we want to read faster; comprehension, we want to understand the material; and retention, we want to remember what we've read. So all 3 of these areas need to be solid if we're going to be efficient. Now, I do want to draw a distinction between these two, because some people think that comprehension and retention are the same thing when there's a subtle difference. So think of comprehension as, what are you understanding the moment you are reading that material? At the present moment, real time. Retention is, what do you remember later on? That could be an hour later, a day later, or a whole year later. And sometimes your comprehension might be good at the moment, and then retention can be terrible, right? You forget things. You ever study all night for a test and then you totally forget everything that you've just read? That happens, right? So here's the dilemma that we have as readers. We need comprehension and retention. So I see Donald in the chat. Hello, Donald. I see your messages. By the way, any messages you guys are posting here in live, I'll be seeing them. Comments, if you're watching this in the future, we will be viewing comments and we'll try to get back. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the live chat or the comments below. But thank you all for, again, joining us, wherever you're joining us from. Let me know in the comments. Let me know where you're joining us from. Now, here's how most people tend to read. You see this green dot bouncing around. Most people, when they're reading, they're kind of bouncing around like this. And of course, sometimes we go back and we got to reread the information. And that happens quite often sometimes, right? Actually, I think I saw something a while ago that said the average person's rereading about like 25% of the time. So, hey there, Noah. I see Noah in the chat. Okay, here's what we got to change as readers. There's a few old reading habits. And think about this. When was the last time you actually learned how to read? I mean, it's kind of weird if you think about it. The last time most people learned how to read was the first time they learned how to read. And to me, this is something that is, we've got to have a whole other conversation about this. We're not going to get into it, but the problem with education and literacy, not just in the US, but in other places too, is that most people learn to read one time in their life when they're very young. And there's not much follow-up to it. Like we really should upgrade our reading skills. And that's not to say that any of you have poor reading skills. I don't know where you are right now. And honestly, it doesn't matter if you're starting at, if you're an average reader, below average, or above average. All that matters is that we make progress, okay? So that's my goal, is to help you make progress today. But the problem is most people learn to read once in their life when they're like 4 or 5, 6 years old. But it's not like that with history. I mean, when was the last time you learned history? I mean, you might be studying history right now, but history is something you learn over time, year by year, through your academic career. Same thing with the sciences, mathematics, but reading, you don't learn it year by year. There's a certain point where they just kind of stop and they're like, okay, I guess you're done learning how to read. And there's no further instruction. How do you read novels? How should you read news? How should you read something very technical? How should we read something philosophical? So there's some old reading habits that kind of build up over time that we got to change. And one of them is something called fixation. Fixation is something your eyes do. They fixate on one word, next word, and so on. But you can read groups of words. Actually, you already read groups of words when you're driving around town. Let's say you're taking a road trip to New York City and you see an exit sign that says New York City. I'm pretty sure that the way your eyes work as far as fixations go, you're fixated on the road, and then when you see the sign kind of out of the corner of your eye, you fixate on the sign for a moment, and then you fixate back on the road. And in that one single fixation with your eyes, with your peripheral vision, you can see all 3 words, New York City, no problem, right? But the problem is, if the words New York City were buried in the middle of some paragraph, most people would go very quickly with their eyes like New York City. And these fixations happen for a split of a second. I mean, the only time you fixate on a word for a long period of time is when that word is like 15 syllables long and you've never seen that word before. But most of the words you're reading, you fixate on one, next one, and it's very, very quick. So this is one habit we got to change and turn into the habit of reading groups of words. Another old reading habit we want to change, and we've all done this, is cutting down the amount of time that we spend rereading material. They call this regression, and everybody's done it, right? Nobody has perfect focus. For me, it's definitely happened where you're reading something and your mind wanders off, or you just kind of space out. Or you ever have that situation where you just start staring at a paragraph and you got to like snap out of it? Yeah, that happens. That's happened to me. That may have happened to you. It's happened to a lot of people. So we got to improve our focus, right? Now, regression is also one of those things where we want to avoid rereading when it's unnecessary. I'll give you an example of an unnecessary regression. You read a sentence, didn't make sense, so you read it again. Still didn't make sense, you read it again. You ever read the same stupid sentence like 7 or 8 times? You're like, why is this not making sense? Well, here's the thing. I would suggest that you should avoid rereading after just one sentence, and here's why. Yeah, it's possible. Maybe I didn't understand it. Maybe I was not paying attention. That's definitely possible. But isn't it also possible that maybe it's not clearly written? It's possible, although in published material, I would assume this is well written. But here's a third possibility, happens very often. Isn't it true that sometimes that sentence doesn't make sense until you read a little further, right? That actually happens pretty often. Sometimes the author doesn't give you all the information at once. Sometimes you gotta finish the paragraph to get the rest of the information. So what I'm trying to get at here is before you do any rereading, don't do it after one sentence. Try to fight that urge. Finish a paragraph. If you finish the paragraph and it didn't make sense, then definitely go back and reread. But try to avoid it after a single sentence. It's kind of like when you watch movies. You ever watch a movie that's a little confusing at the beginning? You know, first 5 minutes of the movie, you're not sure what's going on. Do you stop the movie and rewind and say, you know what, let me rewatch that scene. Maybe it'll make more sense if I watch it again. I mean, there are scenes in movies where you could watch them a million times and you'll never understand it unless you continue watching the film. And the same thing goes with reading. There are sentences that sometimes will not make any sense until you read a little further and finish the paragraph. So try to avoid rereading after a single sentence. Now, I see Donald making the comment, I tend to get brain lock when I reread. It's like my mind won't allow me to go any further. So yeah, so we're going to work on improving our focus here. Don't be too worried if you have trouble with focus. It is something that we can train to improve. I know some people attend these kind of sessions and they tell me they have serious issues with attention, and there are serious issues related to attention. But your attention, however you want to think of it, attention, concentration, focus, that's a skill that can be improved, even though we have challenges with it, right? We've got our distraction as a phone and all these. I mean, if you've got family obligations, I grew up in a very, very busy household. I got 5 brothers and most of them are younger than me. So when I was trying to study at home, it was almost impossible because there was always a distraction at home. So we can work on improving our focus. Now, there is one more old reading habit. This one is hard, one of the harder ones to change. You probably remember when you were first learning how to read. Do you remember you had to get up in front of class and you had to read out loud? How many of you remember this dreadful experience reading out loud in front of class? I used to hate reading out loud because English is not my first language. My first language is Polish. Both of my parents are immigrants from Poland, and I grew up speaking only Polish until I was like 5 or 6. And that's around the time you start learning how to read. So when I was learning English, I was also learning how to read, and I was totally messing up on words left and right. And I didn't like reading out loud. The good news is you don't have to read out loud forever, right? Eventually, your teacher tells you, instead of reading out loud, do what? Say the words in your head, right? Say the words silently to yourself. And they have a name for this. They call it subvocalization. So subvocalization is that voice you hear in your head while you're reading. You may have noticed that you hear voices in your head while you're reading. And it doesn't mean you're crazy or anything like that. You're hearing your voice, right? That's normal. They call that subvocalization. There's another word for it as well. They call it auditory reassurance. Auditory reassurance, subvocalization, basically the same set of words for you're saying the words in your head. Now, by the way, if you're hearing other voices in your head besides your own, if you're hearing other voices, that is a totally separate issue, okay? Now, subvocalization, that's common. But it places some limits on your reading speed. And we're going to talk a little deeper on this topic, but since we've addressed reading speed, one of the things we haven't done yet that I'd like to do right now is to measure your reading speed. So if you haven't already done so, go to get the handouts here, irisreading.com/YTS. I've got that link posted in the description of the video. It's also in the live chat. Again, irisreading.com/YTS. That will just forward you to a Dropbox link where you can find the materials for the session. I want you to refer to speedtest1.pdf, that file name. And by the way, it looks like this. I'm going to have it on my screen here. If you can easily read this, if you expand your screen, like maximize the screen, if you could easily read this from my screen, then you're good to go. Otherwise, if you're on a smaller screen, maybe a phone or a tablet, maybe you want to make sure you have these downloaded so you can easily read that material. So we're going to measure our reading speed for just a quick minute to begin with. I've got a timer here, and you'll hear my timer beep at the end of the minute. Sounds like this. So all I want you to do is read the way you normally would. Don't try to go faster than usual. And of course, don't go slower than usual either. I want you to read for good comprehension. We're only going to read for a minute to begin with, just to get a quick idea of what our reading speed is. And again, we'll be reading from this material right over here. Now, while you're reading, I will turn off my webcam. So goodbye temporarily. Also, I will disable my microphone so you don't hear any background noise on my end. Hopefully we can limit distractions as much as possible while we're doing this quick 1-minute test of your reading speed. So just read the way you normally would. Like I said, here is the article. Go ahead and begin reading. All right, that was a minute of reading, and take a look at the line where you stopped, and let's figure out your reading speed. Now, as you already noticed, there's a bunch of numbers on the side. Those numbers are going to help you figure out precisely what your speed was. They will tell you how many words are to the end of that line. So let's say you started at the beginning and you read up to right over here, the word even. Well, that would be 249 words precisely from the beginning. If you finish the paragraph and read that extra word here further, well, that would be, of course, 250. So figure out your reading speed. Make sure you write it down, whether that's a pen and paper or a digital note. Take note of what your speed was. I'm going to show you the averages in a few moments here. But before I show you the average, I would like you, if you could please, enter your info. And you could enter it in the chat or the comments below. But we like to aggregate this data. So if you could do me a big favor and go to this link right here, irisreading.com/S1. I'm going to put that link in the live chat, irisreading.com/S1, or scan the QR code. And it's just going to take you to a quick little survey where you can enter your speed there. We have thousands and thousands of people that we've measured speed with. So we just like to aggregate the data over time. And you see where it says estimate your comprehension. This is more of a subjective thing. It's like, if you had to estimate your comprehension on a scale of 0 to 100%, what would you say it is? Was it, if you felt like it was easy to read this right here, you might say 80%. If you felt like it was so-so comprehension, you might say 70%. If you felt like you got distracted or you lost your focus or your comprehension was poor, you might say like 60, 50, or 40. Put a number there. Again, go to the link, irisreading.com/S1, or scan the QR code. And if you could please enter that info, it'd be greatly appreciated. Now, here's the thing. Oh, someone says I can't open the link. Hang on 1 second. Did I give the right link? Oh my gosh, I must have spelled it wrong. Thank you for alerting me to that. irisreading.com/S1. Try that again here. Thank you for the heads up there. I'm going to update that link real quick. Okay, thank you for letting me know, Donald. Apologies for that. There's a new link. So enter that info. All right, here's what the average is. Average reading speed, 150 to 250. Some of you might be in that range. Some people are above or below that range. So whatever your speed was, you can kind of compare it to this. I do want you to be aware of a few things. Let me get my webcam back on. Hello, everybody, I'm back. And a few things about this average. First off, average reading speed, this number you see in front of you, we know that the average reading speed kind of depends on what you're reading, right? Because I'm going to go slower. If you give me something very technical, I got to go slower. If you give me something very easy, I'm going to go faster. So your reading speed is more like a range, right? Sometimes you're going faster, sometimes you're going slower. We want to move that range higher. That's the goal. Or you can think of it like this. We want to expand that range. Because sometimes it makes sense to go slower. What if you're reading poetry? What if you're reading to your kid? You know, you're going to go at a slower pace. What if you're doing editing? Or what if you're reading something very reflective or something in philosophy where you got to read something and just kind of ponder and reflect on it? So there are situations where it makes sense to go a bit slower, and other situations where you should be going faster, or you can train yourself to read even faster, like nonfiction, things like that. So this average, it's based on medium level material in terms of difficulty. So if we had to categorize all text into 3 buckets, easy, medium, hard, this would be considered, you know, this article right here, that would be considered medium or middle of the road material. All that means is it's not too easy, and it's not too hard. It's not Dr. Seuss, The Cat in the Hat, and it's not advanced level physics, right? So this is the average for medium level material. Also, this is the average for the adult populace. Even high school students, it's common to see high school students in this range. Sometimes, you know, freshmen might be on the lower end of that range, but it doesn't really take into account whether or not someone's finished like a university level education. If you're wondering, for college educated adults, the average is a little bit higher. It is 200 to 300. Okay, that's for college educated adults. So you can compare your reading speed to this or this. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up as to those numbers. And also, the average reading speed is a little slower. When people are reading on the screen, it can be more frustrating to read on the screen, right? Because you got all these distractions. So, I mean, you might not be reading on a screen like this, big box computer monitor, but you get the idea, whether it's your phone, your laptop, your computer, whatever. People tend to read slower on the screen. And we'll get into why that is and how to improve your speed in a few moments here. But I want to circle back to this idea of subvocalization and this idea that you say words in your head while you're reading. And the problem with it is it kind of comes down to, do I have to say the word in my head to understand what it means? Not necessarily. I'll give you an example. When you're driving and you see a stop sign, do you say stop in your head? Probably not, right? You see a stop sign and it registers, right? You don't necessarily say stop. Same thing if you were walking by a Starbucks and you saw the words, you know, on the sign, Starbucks coffee, you wouldn't look at that and go Starbucks coffee. You wouldn't say that in your head. But if the word stop or Starbucks coffee were buried in the middle of some paragraph, most people would subvocalize because it's an old reading habit. And I do also want you to know some nuance about this, because a lot of people that start looking into speed reading, they get hung up on this concept of subvocalization. And the hang up is this: they think that they need to eliminate subvocalization. Now, all the research I've looked into shows you cannot get rid of subvocalization completely, but you can reduce it. So here's what I mean by reducing it. When I read, I still subvocalize words, but not every single word. So if I had a sentence like, the boy jumped over the fence, in my head, I might just say, boy jumped fence. Same idea comes across. Now, you might think that that implies that I'm skipping words. I'm not skipping words. I still see all of the words. I'm just not saying all of the words. Kind of like when you see the stop sign, you saw the stop sign, you didn't skip the word, you just didn't bother saying it in your head. So we got to change all these habits, and we're going to work on changing them a bit today. And here's the thing, the first thing we want to do, and this next slide right here, think about this. If you are saying all the words in your head, what does that basically mean? If you're saying every word in your head, it basically means you are going to read as fast as you talk. And what is the average talking speed? This is the average talking speed. It's the same number we saw before. Why is it the same? Why does the average person read as fast as they talk? It's because they say the words in their head. Now, you don't want to read as fast as you talk. You can think much faster than you talk. Actually, our tagline here at Iris Reading is reading at the speed of thought. And it's for that reason, because you can build up your speed to get beyond that ceiling, right? If you're a fast talker, I mean, a fast talker would be like Someone in the 300s, or those people that do disclaimers at the end of commercials, or auctioneers, those people talk pretty fast. But even then, there's a limit, right? Your thinking speed is much faster than that. So we want to work on changing these habits. First things first, let's improve comprehension by improving concentration. So your level of focus, it can determine both your speed and your comprehension. If we have no focus, well, then we're not going to get much comprehension, and our speed is kind of irrelevant. If I can't concentrate, then comprehension is going to be hard to come by. By the way, I see a question from Noah here, and he asks, so to reduce subvocalization, we look over the basic grammatical elements and just focus on the basic predicate, noun, adjective, verb. Yeah, to a certain extent. I would say we're kind of ignoring the grammar. Actually, you may already do that to a certain extent. You ever see those little tricks where they'll throw in an extra the, or you see the word the 2 times? Well, you don't really see it on the first read. And then you go back and you're like, oh, there was an extra the there. That's because you're not really reading for grammar. You're reading for meaning, and your eyes glaze over that to a certain extent. So yes, we are trying to kind of focus on the basic predicate, noun, adjective, verb. So as far as improving concentration goes, let's talk about a simple way you can do that. So whenever you're reading on the page, like a physical, actual book, we'll talk about reading on the screen separately in a few moments here. But when you're reading on the page, the easiest thing you can do to improve your focus is to start using your hand, finger, or pen as a guide. What I mean by that is simply going like this, or your finger, just gliding it across the page, or if you prefer a pen, that's fine too. Whatever you're most comfortable with. There's a reason why you want to use something to guide your eyes. It's because your eyes are naturally attracted to motion. Anything that moves around naturally gets our attention. That's how we're wired as human beings. So you can basically trick yourself into paying more attention by creating some motion on the page. Your eyes are naturally going to follow. Now, I do realize it's not as practical when you're reading on the screen. Nobody wants to be using their finger on the screen. That's not really practical. But we'll talk about that separately. There is actually some science as to why you would want to use your hand, finger, or pen as a guide. Let me go over that real quickly. It has to do with the way that your eyes move. There are 2 types of eye movements that all human beings have. One is called a saccadic eye movement, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. The other is called a smooth pursuit. So those are the 2 eye movements. What's the difference between these 2 eye movements? Okay, well, the smooth pursuit happens when your eyes are tracking something that's moving around. If something is moving around, your eyes move in this, what's called a smooth pursuit. Now, when things are not moving around, for example, I'm in a room where everything is stationary, and if I was just moving my eyes around the room like this, looking around, they would move in a saccadic fashion because there's no movement. I'm not tracking anything. I'm just looking around. Let me show you what this looks like, the saccadic eye movement. This is what a saccadic eye movement looks like. Notice the little stops. They're very quick. They call those saccades, or a saccadic eye movement. Now, what about a smooth pursuit? Here's a smooth pursuit. You'd probably notice it's a lot smoother there, right? That's what happens when you're using your hand, your finger, or pen to guide your eyes. Or if something is just moving around, your eyes will move in that manner. Let me show you them side by side so it's easy to differentiate. So on the left, we have the saccadic eye movement. On the right, we have the smooth pursuit. This is when you're using your hand or pen as a guide, smooth pursuit. And if you're not using your hand or pen as a guide, if you're just reading like this with no movement at all, well, you're going to move in a saccadic fashion. Let me show you them side by side. So you can definitely tell the difference, right? Now, it turns out the smooth pursuit, this eye movement right here, it lends itself to better focus. What I mean by that is we pay more attention to things that move around, so much so that our eyes actually move differently when things are moving around. You won't feel your eyes moving this way because they're not super heavy, but they are moving in that manner. You can test this out. So try using your hand or pen or your finger as a guide when you're reading, printed material. But when we're reading on the page, that's one matter. When we're reading on the screen, that's a separate matter. And some of you may do most of your reading on the screen. Actually, I think about 80% of the reading or more that I'm doing is digital screen-based reading. So let's cover that. I want to talk about a simple way to read faster on the screen, but we're going to need some sample text. So let's take text from, we'll take some very technical material from The Onion. Okay, and we're going to read this article right here. NASA lights astronauts on fire in order to simulate life on Venus. Now, this is from The Onion. Not sure if you're familiar with The Onion, but if you're not, you're in for a treat. And if you're not familiar with The Onion, their tagline, as you can see at the top here, is America's finest news source. So let's read this silly article right here. NASA lights astronauts on fire in order to simulate life on Venus. Now, it's a very short article. It's just a paragraph. But what I want to demonstrate is a way to read faster on the screen by pacing yourself, but not pacing yourself with your hand or finger or pen. Instead, we're going to use a program. This is a free program that we developed called Accelerator. If you go to accelerator.com, that's where you can find it. I'll put it in the chat as well, accelerator.com. And basically, all you got to do is copy and paste your text into that program. You click begin, and then you focus your attention right in the middle here. You see the middle of the screen? Those are the first two words of the article. When I click read, the words are going to blink on the screen at whatever speed you set in the program. Now, I have it set right now to 200 words per minute, which is around average. Honestly, the average reading speed is slower than that on the screen, but let's go 200 words a minute to start, and then we'll bump it up after this. Also, I want you to know, since we are doing a live stream, it's going to blink on the screen. Now, on my screen, it is going to blink very smoothly, okay? And on your screen, since you're watching it live, depending on the internet connection on my end and your end and YouTube's encoding, if it gets a little jittery where it's like blinking and then it pauses and then blinks very fast and then pauses again, that could happen during a live stream, but it might not happen. Our internet connection is pretty solid over here. Hopefully yours is as well, and hopefully no hiccups happen along the way via YouTube or any other bumps in the internet superhighway. Let's try it out. Focus your attention in the middle here. I'm going to disable my webcam just temporarily. Focus here. We're going to read very quickly this article. NASA lights astronauts on fire in order to simulate life on Venus. Here we go. Focus in the middle. Here we go. Okay, so that was 200 words a minute. Let's bump up the speed a little bit, but we'll go, let's do 300 words per minute. And you may have noticed, by the way, it was blinking 2 words at a time. You could change any of that in the settings. Maybe you want to see 3 words at a time. Let's try that out on the next article. We're going to take another sample selection from The Onion here. Injured birthday clown taken behind bouncy house to be shot. Okay, let's take this article. I already copy and pasted it. We click begin. Now in the settings, we're going to change the speed. So you click on settings, you go right here, words per minute. Let's change that to 300 words per minute. Let's for people, a lot of people reading on the screen, that's more than double what the average reading speed is on the screen. The chunk size, this is how many words do you want to see at a time? Let's make that 3 instead of 2. Okay, so now what we're going to do, again, focus your attention in the middle of the screen here. Even if this is too fast for you, try your best to keep up. Also, like I said earlier, since we're doing a live stream, it may get a little finicky in terms of the blinking speed. The blinking speed is supposed to be very consistent. When you use it on your own, it will be. But since we're doing a live stream, again, depending on internet connections and things like that, the bit rate on YouTube, all of this could affect the speed of it blinking. But I think it seems like it's streaming just fine, I think, but we'll see if it continues at 3 words at a time, 300 words per minute. So again, focus in the middle of the screen. We're going to be reading this article here. Injured birthday clown taken out back to be shot. Okay, let's try that out here. Apologies for the little pop up there. Let me put on the do not disturb here. Sorry. Focus, do not disturb. Bye-bye. All right, so let's try it out. 3, 2, 1, here we go. All right, so that was 3 words at a time. There's a few other things that you can change with respect to the settings, but I think you get the idea that you can modify these settings to whatever feels most comfortable. I think it's a great training tool if you're trying to read groups of words. Also, if you're trying to train yourself to read faster, you can modify the settings so that maybe they're a little faster than what you're normally accustomed to, because the way we get better at things is really by getting out of our comfort zone. There's some other settings you can explore on your own there. I don't want to dwell on this because you can easily check it out on your own. There's like keyboard shortcuts at the bottom here. You see, like the space bar. It's like your play and pause button. So if it goes too fast for you, you can just hit space. And if you got to go back, you just use your left arrow key to go back, or the right arrow key if you want to skip ahead. Up and down, that's to increase or decrease your speed. And you see all the other shortcuts here. So feel free to check that out whenever you have a chance. Let's go back to the slides here. And again, that's Accelerator. We are working on making future updates to that, an iPhone and Android app, browser plugins, things like that. But you could always go to accelerator.com to take advantage of that free speed reading app that we created. Now, how do you get better at anything? We know that requires practice, right? Now, when we're talking about practice, there is a way that we can go about practicing to improve our reading speed. And there are these things called speed drills that you can practice on your own. But I'm going to show you how they work right now. We're going to do a sampling of speed drills as we speak here. And the goal of a speed drill is very simple. As you see on the screen here, purposely go faster than you would normally read. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to take material you already read. Remember this article? This article, The Age of Distraction, we measured your reading speed for a minute, 60 seconds. And you got to a certain point. Maybe it was right here. Maybe it was over here. Maybe it was over here or somewhere down here. I want you to basically reread what you already read in 40 seconds. Actually, maybe you shouldn't think of this as rereading. It's more like you're just going to skim the text you already read. The goal of this exercise, the goal of this so-called speed drill, is to go a lot faster than usual. So that's why I want you to go through 40. You got 40 seconds to make it to the line that you read up to. Okay, you got 40 seconds to get through the 60 seconds of reading you read. So if you happen to have this printed out, use your hand, your finger, or pen. Or if you don't mind doing it on the screen, you could, I don't know, if I was on my screen, I would take the opposite side of my pen, which is kind of smooth here, and I would just kind of drag it across the screen. If you don't mind touching your screen, you can. I know that's not practical for everyone, so I'll leave it up to you whether or not you choose to use a guide for your eyes. But at the very least, you got to move your eyes faster. I'm going to give you just 40 seconds. Let me put that on the clock here. 1 second here. 40 seconds on the clock, and you got to make it from the top to the line that you read up to. If you get there early, just continue reading from where you left off. But at the very least, you got to make it to that line in 40 seconds. So I'm going to turn off my webcam here. Make sure you're starting at the top. We're going to do our first drill here. 40 seconds. Ready, set, and go. All right, that was 40 seconds. Did you make it to your line? Hopefully you did. And we're going to cut the time down a little bit. Instead of 40 seconds, we're going to do this drill again, but only 35 seconds this time, from the top to the line that you read up to. So same thing, just go a little bit faster. You got 35 seconds now from the top. You're just going to reread or re-skim what you previously read. I want you to get used to seeing the words faster. Let's try it again from the top, a little bit faster. 35 seconds, ready, set, and go. All right, that was 35 seconds. If you got there, very good. Let's do it once more, 30 seconds now. All right, so a little bit faster. We're still doing the same thing from the top to the line that you originally read up to. Now, because I'm giving you 30 seconds, that means you got to go about double your normal reading speed. Now, it doesn't mean that we've doubled our speed. It just means we're skimming at double our normal reading speed. So from the top, again, get to the line that you read up to. Don't worry if you feel like your comprehension isn't that great, because we're purposely going a lot faster than usual. That's okay when we're doing speed drills. And don't worry, in a little bit, we're going to turn our attention to comprehension. Right now, I want you to prioritize speed over comprehension because I want you to get used to seeing the words faster. So let's do it from the top, skim through everything that you previously read in half the time. Ready, set, and go. All right, if you got there, great. We're going to make the drill a little more challenging. What I want you to do now is not just get to the line that you read up to originally, wherever that was. I want you to get through the entire passage. And I'm going to give you a very generous minute and 30 seconds. Now, it's not that generous. I'm purposely giving you a short period of time. I want you, when we're doing speed drills, the whole goal is to go a lot faster than we normally read. Okay, so prioritize speed over comprehension just during these exercises. Now, there's new material, I'm assuming down here you haven't even read yet. Don't read the material, just skim all of that material. So that means you're going to go faster than usual. You will notice your comprehension is going to be terrible through this material here. That's okay during the speed drill. Okay, so a minute and 30 seconds. Let me put that on the clock here. All we're doing is skimming all this text. And just to give you a heads up on time, I will tell you when we get halfway through the time. I'll just jump on the microphone and say halfway when we're halfway through the time. That way you can kind of pace yourself. If you're not halfway, just move your eyes faster through the text. Prioritize speed over comprehension. So all the text you see on the screen here in a minute and a half or less. Ready, set, and go. Halfway. Okay, 1:30 is up. If you made it to the end of the passage, very good. If you missed it, that happens sometimes because people start off going fast because they're like, I read all this already. They're going fast, they're going fast. Then they get to new material here and they're like, whoa, new material. And this is kind of interesting. Let me slow down and read it. Try to avoid that. Okay, I want you to purposely skim. Now we're going to do one final drill, 1:15. Same thing, entire passage. I need you to go at a speed that is faster than usual, regardless of your comprehension. It won't be that great. That's okay. Like I said, we're going to focus on comprehension in a few moments here. I just want you to skim basically right now. So 1:15 on the clock from the top, final drill. Ready, set, and go. Okay, that was 1:15. If you got through all the text, very good. We're going to go back to normal reading. When I say back to normal reading, I mean, I want you to comprehend now. So refer to the other documents from the handouts. Again, all the handouts can be found at irisreading.com/YTS. That is pasted in the description of the video, or you can just type it in your browser, irisreading.com/YTS. I want you to refer to the other file labeled speedtest2.pdf. And that looks like this. So we're going to read for another minute, but we're no longer doing a speed drill. When we're doing speed drills, I wanted you to go faster than usual. This time, I want you to go back to normal reading, and by normal reading, I mean reading with comprehension. So don't go too fast or too slow. Read this material to understand it well. But like I said, not too fast, not too slow. You can, if you want, continue using your hand, finger, or pen as a guide. We're going to read for a minute. And like I said, read for good comprehension. Okay, are you ready? Ready, set, and go. All right, that was a minute. Take a look at the line where you stopped, and let's figure out what your speed was. I'm curious to know if you made an improvement, and if you did, you can let me know in the. You can let me know what your improvement was, or you could just type a yes if you made an improvement. Maybe you could let me know what that was. Maybe you started here and ended there. But if you made an improvement, awesome. That's why I got this success baby over here. Now, what I want you to do, if you can please do me a big favor, remember that survey link? Same link if you go there, irisreading.com/S1. And if you go to that link, you can enter your speed there. Again, we like to aggregate that information over time. So if you could do me a big favor and go to that survey link through the QR code or through the link you see on the screen, also posted in the live chat. Would appreciate the survey information. Now, if you made an improvement, I also want you to be aware of how these drills work. Oh, I see Noah went from 259 to 404. Great. It's not uncommon for people. I mean, most people are not going to double or triple their speed here, but we just did a handful of drills. And I want you to be aware of how these drills work. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about comprehension in a few moments here. How do these speed drills work? I like to compare it to kind of like being on the highway. When you're on the highway, you're going faster than usual. Let's say you're going 70 miles an hour. Now, how does it feel when you get off the highway? Doesn't it feel kind of slow? I mean, sometimes you're still going 40 or 50 and you don't realize it, right? Because the reason it feels so slow is because you got used to going way faster on the highway. Think of your reading speed the same way. The way that these drills work, it's kind of like being on the highway. Let's say you're an average reader, I don't know, let's say you're going around 250 words a minute, but we start practicing at 500 words a minute. Well, then when you drop it down to something like 300 words a minute, it's not going to feel that fast anymore. Let's say you're reading at 300 words a minute. Well, then you practice at something like 600 words a minute. So that's like being on the highway at 600 words a minute. Eventually, you stop practicing these drills and you go back to normal reading. Well, now we might, instead of 300 normally, we might go at 350. And it's like, hey, you know what? That doesn't feel as fast as it used to. And I'm able to comprehend some material. But let's talk about some ways to improve comprehension. Simplest way you can improve your comprehension is to change up your speed. Sometimes you slow down, sometimes you speed up. When should I slow down? And when should I speed up? I've got some driving imagery here because it's just like driving, right? You don't drive the same speed all the time. If you're making a turn like this, you're probably going to slow it down. When you're reading, we should also slow down at certain points and speed up. A good rule of thumb to follow is this. Whenever you're reading any kind of material, and this material is not in the handouts, it's just on the screen here. A good rule of thumb to follow is to slow down on the first sentence of each paragraph, and then you speed up. So you slow down here, speed up through the rest of the paragraph. Slow down on the first sentence, speed up. Why would we slow down on the first sentence? I think you already know the answer, right? Usually the first sentence is the main idea, or topic sentence, introduction, however you want to call it. But that's how we were all taught to write. So we have that first main idea, and then we get our details, or topic sentence, details. Let me zoom in on this paragraph so we can take a closer look. This article is titled India's Skills Famine. Here's the first paragraph. The economic transformation of India is one of the great business stories of our time. That sounds like a main idea to me. I'm going to take that and now I'm going to run with it. I'm going to go a little faster. I'm going through and getting my details, right? When I get to the end of the paragraph, I'm going to apply the brakes, go a little bit slower on that first sentence here. Here's the second paragraph. It reads, but India has run into a surprising hitch on its way to superpower status. Its inexhaustible supply of workers is becoming exhausted. Okay, another main idea. Let me take that and run with it. Get in my details now. Get to the end of the paragraph, apply the brakes, slow it down. How is this possible in a country that every year produces 2.5 million college graduates and 400,000 engineers? Another main point. It's in the form of a question, but get a lot of information. Now we go faster. Here's another paragraph. There was a time when many economists believed that post-secondary education didn't have much impact on economic growth. Interesting. Now we speed up. Next paragraph. The irony of the current situation is that India was once considered to be overeducated. It It's kind of a weird statement, right? How could a country be overeducated? That's a good thing. Now we're going to get our details, right, as we go through the paragraph. So the goal here is to slow down and speed up. Here's the next paragraph. Since the Second World War, the countries that have made successful leaps from developing to developed status have all poured money, public and private, into education. Interesting. Get my details now. India had taken tentative steps to remedy its skills famine. The current government has made noises about doubling spending on education, and a host of new colleges and universities have sprung up since the mid-1990s. You see how every single one of those first sentences gives us a ton of information. And what happens here is that changing your speed forces you to pay attention. So we can get better comprehension in this manner. Now, there's a reason why I read the first sentence of each paragraph out loud to you. It's so we can transition into the next very important speed reading strategy. And this is a strategy that will not only help your speed, but also your comprehension. And that is, before you read anything, you should always inspect what you read. And when I say inspect what you read, I just mean get familiar with something before you read it. That means if you're reading a short article like this, you read the first sentence of each paragraph first. Before you read the whole article, just read the first sentences. Get your main points, right? Okay, now that I got my main ideas, I know this is about India, there's a shortage of skilled labor, they're talking about the economy, education. What's going to happen if you have to read this article now? What's going to happen to your speed? It's probably going to go up, right? What about your comprehension? Isn't your comprehension going to be higher since you know what this is going to be about? And that is exactly the idea behind inspecting. We want to get the gist of it before we get the details. Now, how you inspect the material depends on how it's structured. Here, I would just read the first sentence of each paragraph. But if I was reading something more complex, let's say a chapter in a textbook, something very, very detailed, the way I'm going to inspect is going to be a little different. I'm not going to read the first sentence of each paragraph because I might have a chapter that's like 50 plus pages. So what I do instead is I read my introduction. And by the way, this applies to chapters, reports, journal articles, anything that's structured with like headings and subheadings, introduction. You're getting the gist of it first. So that means read the intro, read the headings and subheadings, read the boldface words, things that are jumping off the page, like anything in italics, maybe a bulleted list. I'm going to read the titles of charts, tables, diagrams. You might have a picture in the middle of your chapter. And then when we get to the end, we should read the conclusion. And also, if you have questions at the end of a chapter, read those. I know sometimes students will have to do questions for homework. I remember that was the case when I was like in high school. Teacher would be like, all right, read chapter 5 for homework, and also for homework, do the questions at the end of the chapter. Well, I better read those questions first before I read the entire chapter. This idea of inspecting something is similar to something, to give an analogy of like exercising and playing sports. What do you do before you exercise and play a sport? You warm up, right? You warm up, stretch out. Think of this as the reading equivalent of warming up, stretching out. Now I'm ready to read this in its entirety. So the way we might inspect a chapter, here's something from the field of finance. Goals and governance of the firm, chapter 1. You see this big red box that I drew? I just drew that to indicate this is obviously the introduction, right? It's just a few paragraphs at the beginning of page 1. The next page, you see all those red arrows? That's where my eyes would be going to read all those quick little parts, headings, subheadings, boldface words. On the next page, I don't have any headings or subheadings, but I do have a table here. I'm not going to read the details. I'm just going to read the title of the table. Next page, subheading, boldface words. Same thing here, same thing here. And then we read the conclusion. We go back to the beginning. I already read all this, so I'm just going to start here. And now I'm going to get my details. So this is something that is very simple advice, but most people don't do it. I see a question from Donald. Is this being recorded? Yes, it is. And posted on the YouTube channel? Yes, it is. I had to step away for some time. Yes, so you could always review this. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The channel is just called Iris Reading, and you can subscribe below. But yes, we are going to have this archived for recording. Now, the idea is that we always inspect before we read the material, and this leads us to what we would call the IRIS method. IRIS, the name of our organization, It's an acronym for how you would read something comprehensively. And by that, I mean at a good speed, with good comprehension and retention. You start with an inspection. All right, I'm familiar with my report, chapter, or short article. Now I'm going to read and get my details. Once you're done reading, it's a good idea to inquire about what you just read. That means ask questions. The most basic questions you can ask are things like, what are the most important takeaways from what I just read? Or your questions might be centered around your purpose. If I'm reading this because I got to write a paper on this topic, I'm thinking about, okay, from what I just read, what can I extract to utilize in the paper that I'm writing? What ideas? And then you might even ask questions like this. What if you're reading this because you got a test coming up, a quiz, or a final exam? I would be asking questions like, what's going to be on the test? What do I need to memorize? And that leads us to our storage step. How am I going to store this information? Now, if you're interested in the topic of memorization, we have a great course on our website that goes into a lot of deep detail on how to memorize information and various strategies. You can check that out at irisreading.com. Or stick around to the end. I'll give you a little code that can give you a nice discount for those courses. But you could also, at the end of this process, do a speed drill. Here's what I mean by a speed drill. We did some today, and it helped some of you make an improvement. If you made an improvement, awesome. By the way, let us know in the comments below what your improvement was. Where did you start? Where did you end on those speed drills? It's not uncommon for people with just a little bit of practice. Sometimes that goes a long way. Here's how you do these drills on your own. You want to see words at double your normal speed. So what that means is if you're an average reader at 200 words a minute, you practice the drills at 400 words a minute so you can get to 250. Now, when I say get to 250, I mean reading at 250 with comprehension. If you're already reading at 250 or more, you got to double it up, practice at a higher speed. So you can get to something like 300 or 350. So again, it's like the analogy of being on the highway. If you're going 70 miles an hour or 700 words per minute, eventually 400 words a minute is not going to feel as fast. That's how we can build up our speed. Here's how it works in this process. When you're reading, you want to time yourself. Let's say you read for 20 minutes. Okay, when you're done reading the chapter or report, whatever you're reading, ask your questions. What are the biggest takeaways? What do I need to memorize? Whatever your questions are based on your purpose. But then you do a speed drill, which remember, we want to go twice as fast. So if I read for 20 minutes, that means I'm going to go back to the beginning of the chapter and I'm going to basically skim the chapter in 10 minutes. That's what a speed drill is. You're skimming what you've already read in half the time. Now, these are just arbitrary numbers. Your numbers might be different, right? You may have read for, let's say it was a shorter chapter and you read for 12 minutes. Okay, 12 minutes of reading, that means a 6-minute drill. Maybe you read something very short. Maybe it's only a 4-minute read. All right, then 2 minutes of a drill. You could also practice those drills using Accelerator. So read it first at whatever speed feels comfortable, blinking the words, and then double up your speed. So that's a good way to build up your speed over time. Like I said, if you're interested in the topic of memory, we've got an advanced course on that topic. Also, if you're interested in getting, if you like some of the passages we read earlier on the topic of focus, there's a great book called Focus, A Simplicity Manifesto in the Age of Distraction. That's where the other 2 articles you read were extracted from. The author's given us permission to freely distribute the PDF of this book. So if you want me to send you that ebook, just shoot me an email, paul@irisreading.com. Let me know that you've attended this session and I'll reply with the PDF of this book. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on speed reading, memory, and other study skills, if you go to irisreading.com/courses, that's where you can find our advanced level courses. So if you go to the link that I just posted in the chat, there are courses that go deep into detail on speed reading, comprehension strategies, maximizing memory, note-taking, and personal productivity. And if you want to get a discount, use this code. It's just my name, Paul, for 30% off. So I think you'll find those workshops very helpful. All the courses are taught by me, and they'll take your reading and your study skills to another level. I think all of this falls under the umbrella of productivity. So we also have a personal productivity course there. But I think you'll find them helpful. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just down below, click the subscribe button, or as they say, smash the subscribe button. Smash, smush, poke, tickle the subscribe button. Do whatever you want with that subscribe button. But if you want updates, feel free to subscribe right there. I've got my contact info right here if you want to be in touch. I hope you found this session helpful. My email again is just paul@irisreading.com. If you want to connect on LinkedIn or Instagram, you see the links right there. If you do connect on LinkedIn, just let me know you were in the session, and I'm more than happy to connect with you. I hope you found today's session helpful. Have a great rest of the day. Post questions in the comments below, and we'll try to get to those questions in future videos on the YouTube channel. But thank you all so much for attending. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.